Hey guys, Bill Demas, your disability attorney here at Herman Wells. I get a question from a lot of medical professionals about the differences with disability insurance and what should they be looking for and what type of policy should they get. So I'm going to explain some things today. Now there are two basic types of policies. One is a private disability policy. Get that from the person you may buy your car insurance through or things like that. You pay a premium to an insurance company for a disability policy. The other type of policy is a group or ERISA policy, and that is usually through your employer, and it's a policy that you don't pay a premium on to an insurance company, but that money is withheld from your check or given to you as a benefit by your employer. Two different policies, and there are benefits, pros and cons of both. I'm going to talk about the private plans first. Now, the private plans give you more flexibility because they're a private plan. Kind of like your car insurance. You can opt for different levels of coverage. First of all, in disability policies, just like in car insurance, there is no quote full coverage because there's so many options. So you have to make sure that you know your options. Now, a private policy, for example, can leave it as your own occupation and never change to any occupation. Some disability policies say we're going to cover you for 2 years for your job, and then after that, it's whether or not you can do any job in the national economy. Well, if you're a medical professional, spent all that time in school, don't you want a policy that covers you doing your job? Don't you want a policy that says, yes, if you can't be a doctor, a nurse practitioner, radiologist, you're disabled, instead of saying, oh, it's been 2 years, go work at Walmart. These policies allow you, these private policies allow you the benefit of doing that. You also want to make sure that when you have this flexibility, that you look at see whether or not the policy is one that's for your own occupation, including specialty. You're a medical provider. Sure, you're called a doctor or a nurse or a therapist, but are you an occupational therapist? Do you have a specialty in hand therapy? Are you a doctor that does micro hand surgery or emergency room medicine? If you're a nurse, are you a NICU nurse? Or are you a critical care nurse? Or are you a trauma 1 nurse? Those are different things. So you need to make sure that your private policy says that you're disabled in your own occupation, and that your own occupation is your literal specialty of what you're doing within your practice, just not nurse or doctor. With a private policy, you get to pick that. You can also have a set amount, and you can pick the set amount. I want $5,000 a month. I want $2,500 a month. You're allowed to do that in these private policies because you pay for it. The more things you add on, the more expensive these policies become, but they're exactly what you want. You can add on what's called riders. Do you want them to give you a cost of living increase? Do you want them to not deduct for certain types of income, like Social Security or other type of retirement? Do you want the policy to allow you to have residual payments and partial disability, meaning you may not be able to work 60 hours a week, but you can work 20 and still make money and still get disability? Those are all riders you can buy. Now, once again, you get what you pay for. So all these options are going to be very expensive. But I would suggest that a medical professional, a doctor or a nurse, I would suggest that you explore and that you get these private policies. Now, some of the benefits of these private policies, besides being able to get what you pay for and choose your policy, is that it's not governed by ERISA. ERISA is the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. And what this is a federal law that governs certain type of employee benefits. But because you buy your policy outside of your employment, it's not governed by ERISA, which means that you're in state law and state court most of the time. You're able to do discovery after filing a lawsuit. You're able to add evidence after your final denial and have a jury trial and put people on the stand and testify and tell your story to a jury. You can go after the insurance company for what's called bad faith. And when a court reviews your case, they're looking at it from a point of it being new. It's called de novo. So they're looking at it and they're saying, is this doctor, is this nurse, is this therapist, are they disabled? And they're making the decisions there, which is very important. Again, what are the cons of these policies? The cons are usually it's a smaller set amount instead of a percentage of your earnings, and they're expensive. Now, I will tell you that the earlier you get these policies, the cheaper that they are. And some of these policies allow you to increase your potential disability benefits But of course, it increases your premiums. But as you move along in your career, you can afford that increase. So it grows with you. So I would look into policies that also allow you to do that. And you can have multiples policies. You can have one for $2,500. You can have one for $5,000. I've seen doctors come to me in their time of needs and they have 2 or 3, 4 policies that they've bought throughout the years at different stages of their lives. They all work together. And most of these private policies, you can get them so they do not subtract what you get from the other ones, meaning there's no offsets. It's not a rule, but it's a rider you can put on. That's why they're so good. The other type of policy is something you see through your work. They're called ERISA or group policies. Now, really quick, I'm going to throw this out there and then I'll explain it later. When I say an ERISA group policy, not all group policies are ERISA, because if you work for a church, a religious organization, or the government, your long-term disability policies and your benefits aren't governed by ERISA. Those are the 2 main groups that are not in it. But about 95% of us don't work for a church or a governmental agency. So that's why I'm going to talk about these ERISA policies. I told you what ERISA was before. ERISA policies, the benefit of ERISA policy, it's very cheap. The monthly premium is very cheap, and a lot of employers give them to you as benefits. The problem, you don't get to pick it. If your employer wants to buy the Ferrari of long-term disability policies, then you're going to have a great policies. If they want to buy the stripped down used car beater of a policy, which some employers do, then your policy is not going to be that great. So what's the first rule of these policies? Get the plan, read the plan, know what your benefits are. Also, especially in the medical setting, these policies normally have what's called classes or tiers or groups. And usually that means the benefits are different and the rules are different for, let's say, the hospital administration. Then it's different for the doctors, and then it's different for the nurses, and then it's different for all the other employees. Your food service, your janitorial, your facilities management people are usually clumped together, and then you have your clinical staff separated by doctors and nurses, and then you have your hospital administration. Usually those are the classes. And you got to make sure that when you read these policies, you know what your benefits are. Because if you're a nurse and you're talking to the doctor and the doctor's like, oh, our policies, our own occupation policies, it never changes. The doctors may not be what the nurses are given under that policy. Remember, you don't get to pick it. It's whatever your employer decides is the best thing for you. But get it and read it. Don't assume you know what's in it unless you read it. I'm going to say that about 100 times. You really, really have to be sure. So another thing that you have to be concerned about with ERISA policies is about 99% of all ERISA policies have what's called an own occupation setting and definition, and an any occupation setting and definition for disability. What you have to be really careful with these ERISA policies is that most policies, about 95% of them, have an own occupation period, which initially pays you, that transitions into an any occupation period. Now let me explain to you what own occupation means. It means that the job that you're doing at the time that you're injured or you're disabled. But the job sometimes in these policies is your overall job title, nurse, doctor. It's not specialty specific in these ERISA policies. Some are, some aren't. But how do you know if it is? You have to get the plan and read the plan. Don't assume because you're a cardiac care nurse that if you can't do cardiac care and lift and turn and all that with patients, that the insurance company is going to find you disabled. Because if your job is just nurse, they're going to say, well, you can be a nurse and you can call people and check on their meds. You can do file reviews. You can do a sedentary nurse position. Similarly, if you're a doctor and it just says doctor and you're an ER doctor or you're a hospitalist, they may turn around and say, well, you can work, but you can just go work in a clinical setting in a doctor's office where you're seeing non-urgent patients. Or if you're a general surgeon, oh, well, you can just go back to be an internist and be a family practitioner. So you have to read the policies to make sure that it says that your disability is based on your occupation in your specialty. Now, I'm going to tell you, a majority of the doctor policies say that. Not a lot of nurses' policies say that. So for you that are out there that are a nurse practitioner, they may just say that you're a nurse, not a nurse practitioner. You got to be careful about that. Also, your any occupation policy. Furthermore, your any occupation definition is important because some say once the period is done, where's your own occupation, it goes into an any occupation, and that means one of two things. One, that you can do any job in the national economy that you're qualified for. What does that mean? Can you be a greeter at Walmart? It literally means that. Can you be a ticket taker at the movie theater? Oh my goodness, I was a trauma 1 nurse. They don't care. The policy says, can you do anything? You got to read it. Sometimes they have what's called earning qualifiers in there. Can you do any job in the national economy and make 50, 60, 80% of your wages? Those are the better policies. Even though they're still saying, can you do something outside your job as a nurse? You're going to have to make a lot of money to do that. Speaking about money, when it comes to pre-disability wages, which is what your benefits are based on, because these ERISA policies usually pay a fixed percentage of your pre-disability wages, 50%, 60%, 66%. It all varies. But what's your pre-disability wages? For a doctor, it's pretty easy. It's their salary. Doctors are usually paid salary, or if they're hospitalists, it's how many procedures and through their CPT codes that they earn. For nurses, you're paid hourly. Or you have a set schedule and a set salary, but then you get overtime, you get holiday pay, you get shift differential, you get all these different things that tend to take a nurse from making 5 figures, sometimes into making 6 figures. So you gotta be careful what your plan says is your pre-disability wages, because a lot of times for nurses, it's actually your base salary, meaning what you were making either in a salary or X amount of money, the base rate for a nurse times 35 or 40 hours a week. You're saying, but Bill, that's not fair. I was working overnights at the trauma 1, which means that I was getting a shift differential pay that increased my hourly rate $20 an hour. And I used to work on Christmas, and I used to work on Thanksgiving, and I used to make double, triple time. They don't count that. Take your base hourly pay times your base hours. Now, not all plans say that, but how do you know? You get the plan and you read the plan. You also have to look at whether or not your plan limits any conditions. These ERISA plans really limit conditions such as mental health. You really need to look at whether or not these plans limit on certain conditions. Most ERISA plans limit mental health to 12 months or 24 months, meaning that if you have a mental health issue, they're only going to pay you for a set amount of time, even though you're still disabled. There are also some things called self-reported problems that they don't pay for some self-reported problems. What's a self-reported problem? Pain, chronic fatigue, some rheumatological conditions are self-reported, migraines. Some policies exclude for that. How do you know? You have to read your plan. Now, the main difference between these ERISA group policies and private policies that make these ERISA policies tougher for people like you to get benefits from, first of all, they're all governed. Their federal laws are all governed in federal court. You don't go in front of state court. They don't allow you to have a jury trial. If you do get a trial, and 95% of these cases never go to trial because they're handled in federal court through something called a motion for summary judgment, meaning written submissions. Even if you get to a trial, in an ERISA case, it's not in front of a jury, it's in front of a federal judge. And the only evidence that the judge will hear was what is in the ERISA record, meaning the claim file of the insurance company at the time your case is finally denied before the lawsuit. Which gets us to the next point. ERISA plans have mandatory appeals. You got to do them in order to file a lawsuit. ERISA plans also, as a general rule, limit what a judge can look at to what is in the record of the insurance company at the time the final denial happens, the final denial of the appeal. What does that mean? It means that if you hire me, I can't go take your doctor's deposition after I file a lawsuit. That doesn't come in. Your testimony doesn't come into the lawsuit. The judge doesn't hear it unless it's put in the appeal. That's the way the ERISA law works. The ERISA law also gives a benefit to the insurance company because it gives them discretion, meaning they have the right to make certain choices in the medical evidence, and they got a right to interpret things a certain way. And let me tell you where that comes from. ERISA was born out of really pension litigation back in the late 60s and early 70s. So I'll give you this example. If back in the early 80s, if your stockbroker told you to invest in Betamax instead of VHS or HD DVD instead of Blu-ray, and you put your money into those, in Betamax, which failed as a company, you can't turn around to your stockbroker later and say, look at that. They owe me money. They made a bad decision, because the judge would look at it and go, well, hold on. When he put your money in Betamax, it was a viable competitor to your regular VHS. Nobody knew who would win that war. So it was reasonable at the time to put the money in there because They're both new technologies. So the court looks at reasonableness, which is another reason why an ERISA claim, when I was talking before about private claims, are looked at from new, de novo. These ERISA claims, the judge looks at it arbitrary and capricious. Was the insurance company reasonable? I want to say this again, reasonable, not right. A federal judge could say, Hartford, Prudential, Liberty Mutual, New York Life was wrong in making your denial, but they had a reasonable basis for it. They relied on a doctor. They relied on certain evidence that normal people and reasonable people in their position would have relied upon. So that's why these cases are so difficult. And that's why these policies are so cheap. What did I say before? You get what you pay for. These policies will also, these ERISA policies, offset for certain types of benefits. Social Security, disability for you and your kids. Doesn't matter if your kids are living with you, for you and your kids. So if your kids get disability based on your record, that money comes out of your LTD check. If you're getting veteran benefits, VA benefits for rated conditions, some policies now are deducting those veteran benefits even though you were working with them and they're not the reason for your disability. It's another type of benefit. If you're getting retirement benefits from your employer or sometimes from the VA or military retirement or another pension, these plans can take money away from you from what you get from other sources, and the courts have upheld it because that's what's written into the policy. Those are the rules of the game. Now, let me talk to you about these church plans and governmental plans. In my mind, they're a hybrid, okay? They have all the rules and regulations of an ERISA policy, the offsets, the self-reported problem limitations. They can look just like an ERISA plan. However, once you file suit on them, they're like your private plan. State law, state court, jury trials, bad faith, the ability to do discovery. Now, I recommend that medical professionals have a private plan, even if they have an ERISA or group plan. You can have them both. Don't worry about it. And most ERISA plans do not offset for your benefits from your group plan, okay? So I'm not saying all of them do, but most plans allow you to have both. So get both. Is it more money? Yes, but you get what you pay for. What I said before, you also have the ability to increase these private plans in terms of your LTD amount that you're going to get, your disability amount. Of course, your premiums are going to go up. That's fine. And if your plan doesn't allow you to do it, you can always go and buy separate plans at different parts of your life. People do that all the time. You can't increase coverage through ERISA policies because it's set. It's 60% of your wages and that's it. But you can increase your benefit through these private plans, and I recommend you having both. The other reason is if one policy doesn't accept you, you have another policy that's paying you while you're waiting for the other policy to go through. If you have a disability policy now, get a copy of it. I think I've said it 100 times, I'll say it 100 times more. Get the plan and read the plan. You can't know how to play a game if you don't know the rules, and those are the rule books. Plain and simple. How do you get it? Easy. If it's a private plan, you call your insurance company, or you write them and say, hey, give me a copy of my plan, and they're going to give you a copy of your plan. If it's through your employer, now you got to get it from HR. That's what the law says. So call your HR. It says, hey, I want a copy of the plan. They should have it nowadays. They're going to have it on a website. They're going to send you a link. Don't be fooled. They're going to try to give you the summary plan description. You don't want the summary plan description, which is going to be basically the Cliff Notes version of all your policies. Let me stop myself there. It's good for you to have that so you have an overview of all your health care and short-term disability and whatever other benefits you have through your employer, life insurance. But for your long-term disability and or short-term disability, your disability policies, you're going to want to push your HR to give you a copy of the policy, because the policy itself that's issued by Hartford or New York Life or Sun Life, those are going to be the policies that really have the details that are really going to show you the rules of the game instead of just an overview of the game. And I'll say it again. Once you get the plan, just don't put it in a drawer. You have to read it because you have to understand it. And if you're reading your private policy and you don't understand something, now's the time to ask the insurance company. Don't ask the guy or gal that sent it to you or sold it to you because they won't know. It's time to ask the insurance company, wait a minute, what does this mean? What does this rider mean? Because you may have bought something that you thought was A, but once you read it and get an explanation, it's really B. If you do that, guess what you can do? You can change it. You may be able to buy another rider for the policy if they'll still allow you to do that. Or you can go out and buy a policy to cover the issues that this other plan isn't. Once you're disabled and you read the policy and it doesn't cover what you want, you can't go back and change it. That's too late. Also, why is it important to read your ERISA policy? Because if you read it and your employer has bought you the junk used car version with, the wheels falling off, you can look back and say, this isn't going to cover anything. And then you may want to go out and buy your own private policy. Remember, you can't play the game or win the game unless you know the rules, and those policies are the rule books. How about if you have questions? Who do you reach out to? Insurance agents are great sources. I got a bunch of good friends that are insurance agents. I'm going to tell you, they don't know a lot about disability law, and they don't know a lot about disability plans. What they're parroting is what Prudential or MetLife, their rep came and gave them a speech at the office, and they're going down the talking points. Does it mean that they're bad people? Absolutely not. They're great people. They really want to help you, but I don't think they have the depth of knowledge to understand the consequences of these down the road. I don't know how many times I get a call from somebody that says, but my insurance agent says this should be covered. And I'll point to the policy and say, no, it's not covered. It's just not. So what can you do? You can always call me, 727-821-3195, and say, hey, Bill, I have this policy. I have some questions. I'll be happy to go over it. I'll be happy to look at it for you. If it's an extensive policy, sure, might there be a small consultation fee? Of course, because I'm going to have to spend a couple hours doing it, but it's well worth your time. If it's a quick little question, I'll be happy to answer it. Not an issue. So again, if you have any questions, give us a call here, Herman Wells, 727-821-3195. I am your disability attorney, Bill Demas at Herman Wells, and I look forward to talking to you, and I wish you the best of luck.